John, 130 years celebrating this weekend. You've just said you've been involved in the club almost half of that, or more than half of that.
Yes.
Just talk me back through how you first got involved with the club, what you can remember the club was like back then.
Well, first of all, I used to watch before I played at the lawn just down the road. And then I was playing at the time for the local boys' club, Nelson Boys' Club. Forest Green had two teams then, and it was in the era before substitutes.
Okay.
So really, they signed about 12 players for each side, and that was it. They had a couple over. Those couple over used to draw in a few more, and a few of us younger players, and I played in a couple of friendlies for them. But at about that time, in 1950, I was 16, and Forest Green had a disaster. It may have been 51. Two players in a couple of weeks broke their legs. They were defenders. I was a defender playing for Nelson's Youth Club, Boys Club, and I was asked to play. I played a few games for the reserves and then got a game for the first team. So it was that for the next 5 years, until Her Majesty invited me to join the Royal Air Force as a national serviceman, which I did. And when I came back, then I played again.
Can you remember that first game? Can you remember the first time you stepped out at the lawn?
Perhaps not the first, but one of the most dramatic was a Saturday game at home to Chalford. It was for the first team, but it had snowed.
Oh, okay.
It had snowed, and although it wasn't deep snow, you couldn't see the lines or anything like that. But a gang got up there in the morning and they cleared the lines, and we played. I played one of my first games for the first team in snow against Chalford at the old lawn.
Love that.
Yeah.
And how much has the game changed from when you were playing to what it's like now?
Well, tremendously. To start with, squads. No one heard that word. No one heard the word substitute, okay, and that sort of thing. But one of the biggest changes was the kit, the fitness of the players. When I first played, I played in the first team. I was 16, 17, but some guys in there were 37-ish. Now, really, football was the only sport really available to the majority of working class fellows. Golf clubs weren't keen to take in those. They had reverend gentlemen and shop owners and factory owners and things like that, and so golf wasn't an option as it is now, and so they played. The first time I think I went into the dressing room as a 16, 17-year-old, the captain was an old schoolmaster who was about 37 years of age. I didn't know really whether to call him Sir or John. Otherwise, the kit, I mean, footballs, now they were leather bombs,
Yeah.
and on a wet day, and they mostly were wet. Because grass wasn't cut the way it is now, where pitches weren't prepared, so they were wet and treacherous, and the ball would come through the air and you hoped it wouldn't come anywhere near you, that you had to get up and head it. We've read recently about some of the reports of old professional players suffering from Alzheimer's because of heading the ball, and that was a bit of a problem.
Yeah.
Fitness of players, did they train? No, not really. They did a bit at the start of the season, and then it got dark and no one had lights and things like that, so they didn't bother. And I'm convinced that there were players when I was playing who would work on a Saturday morning. On their way home, they'd have a pint or two before playing. They certainly smoked in the dressing room.
Yeah.
So,
amazing. So different, isn't it? And you must have seen some great players, some great managers come through. What's your best memory? Who stands out to you that you've seen come through at Forest Green?
For me, well, I became chairman of the club in 1969, and one of the first things I was able to do and pleased to do was to invite Peter Goring along, the ex-Arsenal Cup winning forward, He'd had experience after Arsenal, it's somewhere in Essex, I've forgotten, and then came back to Bishop's Cleeve. He had a short period with either Cheltenham Town or Gloucester City, or maybe even both, and he became available and we snapped him up. He brought an entirely different attitude to the club, and was a character himself, an attraction. He was like a magnet, really, and the players around came here because he was here. At the time, earlier than that, you could say that village or small town life was very insular. People stayed in the area, they played for the local side because their grandfather did, their brother-in-law did, and they hoped their son would. He introduced players who'd played for Cheltenham and lived in Cheltenham. He brought players in from Gloucester, and this was all new to us. But combined with the local talent, the best of local talent, we were then about to play in the Hellenic League, which was a step up for us because we were travelling to Berkshire and further afield, Oxfordshire, Berkshire, and down into Middlesex to play, and that is some change for a local club like us. I was chairman by then, as I said, and I got interested in the management of the league, and I joined the board. It was an exciting time because we were sponsored by Rothmans, cigarette people, and you had rewards for scoring so many goals in a match. I think if you scored more than 3 or won by more than 3, then you got your 25 or 50 pounds, whatever it was. And at the end of the season, we ended up with a fair chunk of money, like over £1,000, as well as we did eventually win the league. But at the introduction of Rothmans, they came in with the Rothmans Cup because they sponsored 3 other leagues, the Western League, the Northern Premier, and I think the Isthmian. And they were interested in a cup that involved all 3 clubs, and in the process of playing in that competition, we ended up in Guernsey and Jersey, up north as far as Towlaw, would you believe? Oh my goodness, that was an outpost. And we hosted several sides from up in that area down here in that sort of competitions.
When you see the club now going away to places like Bradford City, for example, in this division, Swindon Town, how does that make you feel as a former chairman to see where the club has come through to at this point in their 130 years?
Yeah, really proud and amazed that they used to call us the friendly little club on the hill. I think it was a reporter in Cheltenham, in the Cheltenham Echo, Goddard was his name, who coined that phrase, you know, and we're a friendly little club, but we are mixing now. I sometimes sit back and think, how many clubs have we played, not in friendlies, but in competitive fixtures that have been or were in the top division of English football? And it's amazing, really amazing.
And on Saturday, we mark the 130 years with a celebration here. Some of the former players, some players you'll know very well. How nice is that going to be, and to see the fans and to have a proper celebration?
Love it, and the fans deserve it because they do remember these former players much more than I do. I remember faces but not names. And when, you know, we were talking about matches of yonder year, and I remember the name, but I can't put a face to it, or the other way round. They deserve it. Yes, they often chat to us and say, "Do you remember so and so?" In fact, on the forum, there's something about former players and managers, and that's gone to about 50 pages now, or perhaps even more. Yes, I'd like to follow the progress of players who've left us and gone on to other clubs. That's an honour, I feel, for the club, and I think the manager now is particularly good at bringing players on, discovering players, and bringing them on. So yeah, whether it's Deutsch scoring goals against Celtic or forgot the other fella's name, scored for Wales the other day.
Oh, keep them all, yeah.
Yes, he did.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's amazing, isn't it? It's nice to see those players go on.
What is also nice is to see players who come back and come to the game. They don't come very often because they're living abroad. Only the other day I met a chap who played mainly for a youth side. We had it one year. Furley his name was. He now lives in Nice.
Okay.
But he comes over a couple of times a year to see his mother and family, other family, and comes to a match. I said to him last time, don't come again for a bit because we seem to lose every time you're here.
Well, hopefully he's not there on Saturday.
No, I banned him.
We're looking forward to seeing you on Saturday.
Indeed.
We'll make some name tags so you know everyone who's going to be in there.
Yeah.
And it should be a great day. So thank you very much for your time, John.
Okay, thanks.